a jungle back there with not potatoes, but tomatoes.
Peppers, yeah.
Sounds like all good.
Yeah, most everybody grows tomatoes and peppers, yeah. We grew some really incredible corn back there too. Okay, my name is Tom Privatera. I'm from Poughkeepsie, New York. I grew giant pumpkins here, my biggest being at 1,401.5 pounds. Been to a lot of competitions, and that's my story.
I know you grew up in Italy, so do you think that influenced like your want to grow vegetables or to become a chef?
It definitely to become a chef. You know, when I lived in Italy, you know, the schooling over there is free for the Culinary Institute and different trade schools, so it was easier for me to follow my dream of becoming a chef. After having several jobs as a chef here in the United States, where a lot of times they just wanted you to open up a can of whatever, stick it in the microwave, and to me that wasn't cooking. That was it was pretty depressing, to be honest. So I fell in love with computers, and I was making websites, and I was contacted by a group of growers called the New York State Giant Pumpkin Growers Association, and they wanted me to build them a website, but my wife and I thought it was a joke, so we decided to go and check out this competition that they were having to make sure this was all real. And when we arrived there was so many giant pumpkins that I was just mesmerized, and I looked at my wife and said, "I'd like to do that," and she said, "You're silly, you'll never do that." And that's all I needed to go ahead and prove that I could do it.
I thought he was crazy. He told me he was going to take over the whole entire yard. The kids wouldn't have anywhere to play. And he started growing giant pumpkins.
You know, one thing led to another, and I started tilling up my backyard, and from there it just went nuts. You know, the amount of preparation that was needed was unlike any other gardening I've ever done, but I liked the challenge, so that's how I got into it. What people look for is, believe it or not, genetics of the pumpkin. Some people want to make sure they grow a bright orange pumpkin like a jack-o'-lantern. Some people don't care about the color; they just want the size, or they select them with pumpkins that consistently grow really thick walls, because that means it has extra weight to it. So it really depends on what you're going for. And then you select the seed that you want, and you can contact the growers, and most growers will give you their seeds for free. But years ago, there used to be plenty of auctions for seeds, and I've personally seen some auctions where seeds have gone for $1,000 for one seed, not knowing if it's even viable or not. So that was pretty crazy. Right around the middle of May, as we start, tilling up, or as soon as we can get into the garden, once the snow is melted and it's dry, we till it up. We take soil samples, we send them in to be analyzed, and we add whatever the soil's lacking for our particular crop. The nutrient requirements are so far over the top compared to any other, normal vegetable that you grow. So the soil actually gets jacked up, but we try not to do chemical fertilizers. Most people try to do it organically to, keep the soil microbiology, thriving. And, you kill the soil and nothing's going to grow. I could only grow 4 at the most here, just because most plants need between 500 square feet to 1,000 square feet or more.
And how about like water, fertilizer, the daily maintenance of once you plant the seed?
A lot of care. This is nothing like a regular garden. these plants, once they're established and they start growing, they can grow up to 6 inches to a foot a day. You have to manage the vines and which growth you want, and there's such an overload of work that you have to do. We would put in easily 40, 50 hours a week just in the garden.
We would basically watch them during the day because he had a full-time job and he wasn't home and I was. So we would check the temperatures outside, see if the plants were flagging, the leaves, if they were, we would water them. At night when he came home, we were out there probably for 3-4 hours after we were weeding.
We've put in watering systems. I mean, the irrigation systems were several zones, and we had it all automated with timers. And one zone would go, and then when that stopped, another zone. And so we were able to water where we needed it, and not just the entire garden. This used to be part of the irrigation system we set up. On the entire backyard was a garden. Oh my God, the woodchucks. They're such. One year, they ate every plant I had. Just like someone, drove a lawnmower over them. Ended the season, or you have a super huge big pumpkin and they chew a hole in it, and you're done. You can't enter in competition if they have a hole in it. Disqualified. So, yeah, or when you start moving the pumpkin around, you see mice come out from underneath. They have shelter, they have food, and your season is done. There's a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money goes into that. This is nothing. It isn't cheap. Craziest thing, one of the first years that my wife and I were growing, we had this pumpkin that was so brilliant, shiny orange. I mean, it was beautiful, like a giant jack-o'-lantern. And we happened to be at a friend's house, and I was telling him how beautiful this was and how well it was doing, and I was going to bring it to competition. And I just seen that pumpkin earlier in the morning, and we decided to take a drive over to the garden to show him that pumpkin. And when I uncovered it, it had split wide open, and that was it. The season was done, and it was pretty depressing. So it's something else. You really have to be diligent about being out in the garden. It's not a spectator sport. Again, after the first year that I saw everybody having a lot of fun, and seeing that even if you had a smaller pumpkin, people still were cheering you on, I decided that it was time to take them to competition. But the big problem was how to lift a 1,000-pound pumpkin. Basically, we would have a front end loader come in, and we have special harnesses that we had to put around the pumpkin to lift it up. And there's more than once pumpkins have fallen down and ended the season. But I was fairly lucky. The first time I brought a pumpkin to competition, it was over 1,000 pounds, which at the time was huge. The weigh-offs that we really used to go to every year was in Cooperstown, New York. There was a fabulous weigh-off, huge. It actually was one of the premier in the country for a long time, and people from other states would bring in their pumpkins and whatever else they grew. But there was so much world-class competition there. There were world record holders that were in the same group, and so the biggest I ever, or the most I ever did at the Cooperstown weigh-off was number 2. But just the knowledge that I was standing next to a world record holder and I had beat him was pretty nice. Other than that, there's so many weigh-offs throughout the country, but also throughout the world. Europe, you name it, there's a weigh-off for this kind of growing. All right, and afterwards you could either try to sell them, or you can bring them home. Totally up to you, or you can donate them. And once they got past 1,000 pounds, different people, businesses would buy them for displays, and they would give you pretty much $1 a pound, and you get all your seeds back. You know, if you have an award-winning pumpkin, you want the seeds because other people are going to want to grow them too.
So you mentioned in Cooperstown that they race them down the river.
Oh yeah, that was hysterical. They have a regatta. And there's one case that you don't want 1,000-pound pumpkin. The heavier they are, to you know, get moving. So you get like a 500 to a 700-pound pumpkin in specific shape, and they would carve them out and paint them, and they would be put into the lake up there, and they would have regattas.
We're not the first people to interview you. You were on another TV show on PBS's Lord of the Gourds. What
Yep.
was that like?
I thought it was a joke at first. I got a phone call from somebody with a very much Australian accent telling me that they were from PBS and they wanted to come and film me. And I thought it was my friends, you know, joking around. So I was like, sure, come on. Yeah, I'll be waiting for you. And about 3 days before they really were going to come, they called back to make sure that I was still interested. And at that point we got real nervous because it was the end of the season. We let weeds grow, and so we were in the garden pulling weeds for hours, making it look nice. And the PBS crew came. They set up their cameras. They set up something that looked like a railroad track, you know, with the cameras, and they're sliding it back and forth. And anything they wanted us to do, they would make us do 5 and 6 takes of it, whether I was filling up a sprayer and spraying water all over everything. The best part was the producer and the cameraman got into a fist fight in my backyard, and I had to kick them off my property, and then they came back and we had to kick them off again, and finally they played nice with each other and they got their footage. And then we went up to Cooperstown, and they filmed 5 or 6 of us in a convoy with all our, you know, pumpkins, and they're hanging out of, you know, the vans trying to film us. And one guy almost fell out of the van. It was pretty fun. Basically, I stopped growing, you know, because life got in the way. Different jobs that didn't permit it. Well, we didn't go on vacation in the summer for 10 years because I was too busy watching pumpkins. And after a while you start thinking, the Caribbean or pumpkins, Europe or pumpkins. You know, something had to give, and you know, pumpkins went to the side for a couple of years. You know, after learning what I did about agronomy and basically just, you know, getting plants to produce, you know, my tomato plants, even in grown in containers, they get over 7 feet tall, 5 feet wide, and they produce so much. Pepper plants produce so much that I have to give stuff away. And so, you know, it's fun. Growing, you know, just in general is fun for me.
And now you're a grandfather, so do you want your grandson Braden to continue to learn how to grow?
Absolutely, and that's my plan for this year. I'm going to till the garden of him and put in the garden. I'm probably going to put in at least 1 giant pumpkin, and with the hopes that Braden and I, you know, can do it together, get him, you know, outside and, you know, enjoying, you know, nature and growing, and, you know, not stuck in the house watching a TV.